Welcome to Stagecoach, where you'll find the best Western books on the market and the men and women who write them. This podcast is brought to you by Dusty Saddle Publishing, home of the best-selling authors in the Western genre. This is your host, Ginger Winters. Join us as we continue the story of Finn Sullivan, Mountain Man, by Scotty Casper, read by Jerry Underhill.
Chapter 7 Spawn of the Devil. On the fourth morning at the sick camp, Finn and Cash were able to ride off toward their destination, Montana. Their spirits were high and they were looking forward to the adventure. After 4 long days in the saddle, they were cutting through the northwestern corner of Nevada, riding through the Black Rock Desert, and it was a desolate country with little water. They were fortunate to make it through because they went into it with all of their canteens full. Both men and their horses were put on water rationing. They were fortunate to find a water tank just a short distance north of Black Rock Point that was one of the few features of the land, and it was a little over 8,000 feet. The Spanish call a water tank, which is a depression in solid rock, un tanque de agua. Both man and beast filled their bellies with the sweet-tasting water, and the men filled all of their canteens, and they continued their journey. After 3 more days, they passed through the corner of Nevada and into Idaho. They were making good progress because nothing happened to impede their travels. That is, until they figured they had veered too far west, and they had gone out of their way a considerable distance. Cash patted his horse on the neck.
"Finn, I've got a confession to make."
"Oh, what have you now?"
"I got us going kinda in the wrong direction."
"How's that? What do you mean?"
"I got us going too far west. Now we're going to have to cut through southeastern Oregon, and we should have been able to avoid Oregon altogether. Sorry. This is new country to me, and I messed up."
"Don't worry about it, Cash. I'm eager to look Oregon over. My butt doesn't hurt anymore. It's toughened up, and I'm enjoying the ride."
"All right, partner. Let's ride then."
After 3 more days of hard riding, they met up with an old trapper going the opposite direction.
"Whoa,"
he said.
"As I live and breathe, is that you, Cash? In the flesh, 6-toed Baker, is that you? None other. I thought you had gone under. Where you been?" "I've been at sea,"
Cash said.
"Whew. This child can't figure someone that will go to sea. I thought you were a landlubber." "I got shanghaied out of New Orleans. I was down there on a little holiday."
6-toed Baker had a gray beard that hung 6 inches below the tip of his chin, and he was dirty, and his buckskins were a filthy mess. But worst of all, he stank of a nauseating odor.
"That's rough, Cash. I'm glad you survived it. Who's this yonker trailing along with you?"
He pointed to Finn.
"This is Finn Sullivan. He's from Ireland. He got shanghaied too. We were on the same ship." "Cash, he's probably a fine fellow, but is he a good partner to ride the river with? Will he back your play when the chips are down?" "Look at him. He's nearly 6 feet tall, and I calculate he weighs in nearly 200 pounds. I've taught him to shoot, knife fight, fist fight, and wield a hawk. He's already put a couple miscreants under. No, I got no reservations for having him as my partner." "Well, howdy there, young feller. Don't be offended by what I said. Life in these here mountains can be downright pleasant. Sometimes it can get downright dangerous, and a man needs to be sighted by a feller with sand."
"No offense taken," Finn said.
6-toed Baker, where you headed?"
Cash asked.
"California. I'm getting too old to wander these here mountains. I got myself a little money saved up, and I'm going to the land of milk and honey to live out my days."
Cash nodded his head in agreement.
Good for you. Just try to hold on to your hair while you make the trip. Quite a few Indians over the years have looked longingly at this crown and glory, but they haven't lifted it yet. Where are you headed, Cash? Finn and I here headed to Montana. We intend on doing a little trapping and live off the land. How are you going to trap if you haven't got any traps? We intend on buying some later on. Well, I got 12 traps. I'm tired of toting them around. I don't know why I brought them with me in the first place. I'll let you have them. $50. That's half what they cost new. You got a deal,
Cash said. Cash, it's getting late. Why don't we set up a camp?
I've got buffalo meat we can cook. Do you have coffee? I've been out of coffee for now under 3 months, and I've got a powerful hankering for it.
Cash chuckled.
Yes, let's camp, and we do have coffee. I ain't had buffalo for 3 years. That would be a treat. And I'm sure Finn has never so much as tasted it. I bet he's gonna like it. You'll like it,
Six-Toed Baker said.
It's good, fresh buffalo.
Cash gave him a friendly pat on the shoulder.
Six-Toed Baker, when's the last time you took a bath? You're a mite ripe. As far as I recollect, it's been about a year. I took a dip in Yellowstone Lake up in Wyoming last summer. It was cold. I came close to freezing my manhood plumb off, so I ain't bothered with it since. Besides, I think it keeps the mosquitoes off. While I cook dinner, why don't you go over in yon creek and take a dip? I got some store-bought soap. Not on your life, Cash. I'd just as soon go to the gallows.
Ugh, Cash muttered. Six-Toed Baker, how'd you get your nickname? I'm assuming your mom and pa didn't name you Six-Toed, Finn asked. Six-Toed Baker pulled his moccasin off and showed Finn that he had 6 toes on his left foot.
I was born with it,
he proudly announced. I'll be damned, Finn said. They set up a nice camp, boiled coffee, cooked beans in a pan, and roasted buffalo hump. It was a mighty fine meal. After dinner, Cash and Six-Toed Baker swapped tales of their exploits as trappers in the Rocky Mountains. Finn lay back on his bedroll and listened, and was enthralled by what he heard. He was so excited about this new chapter in his life he could hardly stand it. He just knew he was going to love exploring and wandering about in the enchanting Rocky Mountains, to go just where the wind took him. Finally, after 2 hours of discussing truths and half-truths about their years of trapping, the evening wound down. Everybody was getting sleepy.
Cash and Finn, before we get to sleep, I want to give you a warning. Oh, what might that be?
Cash asked.
An Indian they call Wolverine is loose in Idaho. He's on a killing rampage. The Utes ran him off because of his evil ways, so he's angry, wandering about slaughtering everybody he meets. And I do mean slaughtering. He is bad news. After he kills people, he cuts them up and strings their body parts along a trail. A man can walk along and finds an arm here, a toe there, a liver on a rock, and a head mounted on a tree branch. You get the idea. Watch out for him. He has tattoos all over his face. Oh, when he encounters a woman, he rapes her multiple times before he cuts her up. The son of a bitch is the spawn of the devil.
Finn and Cash rode for several days without incident, and they marveled at Snake River Canyon. It was a tremendously deep slash in the earth. It doesn't rival the Grand Canyon, but Finn and Cash couldn't believe how deep it was. I simply can't believe my eyes, Finn said. We have some beautiful country in Ireland, but nothing like this.
You haven't seen anything yet. Wait until you see Montana,
Cash said. Near where present-day Twin Falls was settled at the end of the 19th century, they discovered a cave that would someday, in the not-too-distant future, be named Wilson Butte Cave.
We're going to live in a cave in Montana, so do you want to go in and look around?
Cash asked. Yes, of course. They built a couple torches using green tree branches. They wrapped the end of the branches tightly with rags and smeared the cloth with pitch from a pine tree. Going in the cave was kind of scary, but Finn enjoyed the adventure. It's cooler in here than out in the sunshine, he said.
Yes, this is quite a comfortable temperature, and will stay like this the year round. That's why we are going to live in a cave in Montana. We won't have to gather a huge supply of firewood, and we'll only need enough to cook our meals.
Gosh, look at this. I found 4 arrowheads.
Finn, take those with you. Those might have been crafted by ancient people, maybe from 10,000 years ago. Come over here and look at this. There are writings on the wall. Scientists call them pictographs, and they are done in red ochre.
The scenes depicted stick-figured men with spears and bow and arrows hunting woolly mammoths. I can't believe it, Finn said. How long do you figure ancient men have wandered through these here Rocky Mountains?
Finn, that's a question that will probably never be answered.
They continued traveling north, and when they arrived just slightly south of the future site of Boise, Idaho, the weather took a turn for the worse. It was late afternoon, and black, ominous clouds spread across the sky. The temperature plummeted, and the wind began to howl. An owl screeched off in the distance, and even though Cash and Finn were brave men, they both got spooked.
I hope to hell it doesn't rain,
Cash said. That makes 2 of us.
Spooky, isn't it?
Cash asked. Yes, the hair's standing up on the back of my neck. About an hour later, however, the clouds had passed on by, and there was no rain or hail, and for that they were grateful. Then they discovered an arm lying on the trail. They got down and looked it over closely, and determined it belonged to a man, and it was a darker shade, so they thought it must have belonged to an Indian. They rode on and found an ear, then a foot, then a number of internal organs, and finally, an Indian's head was mounted in the fork of a birch tree.
This has to be the work of that Wolverine 6-toed baker warned us about. We've got to stay alert, Finn. We might end up getting strung along the trail like this poor devil,
Cash said. I think I'm going to be sick, Finn said. How could anybody do such a thing?
Apparently, he has gone completely haywire, and he must hate everyone and everything in existence. But no doubt the devil is behind this. If you have a question as to whether or not evil exists in this old world, this here should help you realize that it does.
Finn climbed down from his horse and heaved up his breakfast and lunch. He raised his head back up and took a couple swipes at his mouth with his sleeve. I'm sorry you had to see that. I suppose I'm a weak little sister in some ways.
You are not weak, just human. Don't worry about it. I'm about to do the same.
They had a little chuckle over that. Should we bury these human parts? Finn asked.
No, the animals of the forest will take care of them.
Good. I don't want to touch those bloody things.
Actually, I hope we catch up with Wolverine. We need to settle his hash and stop this thing. Humanity would owe us a huge debt,
Cash said. Yeah, Finn said, nodding his head in the affirmative. They caught the dead Indian's horse, a palomino, and took him along with them. They rode along the trail and encountered more human parts. A stomach, then a liver, then a nose, then some Indian's manhood, then a foot, and on and on. It was an absolute nightmare for them. They stopped and took out a spade that was on their pack horse and shoved the body parts off the trail so others wouldn't have to witness the horror. I wish we would have thought of doing this when we spotted that first set of body parts. Should we go back? Finn asked.
No, let's continue on. But keep your eyes open. I don't know about you, but I didn't escape slave labor on a sailing ship to get cut up and strung along a trail in Idaho.
They gathered in the dead Indian's horse and trailed him along with them with a lead rope. The horse was a solid-looking buckskin that looked like he was about 16 hands. They rode along looking right and left, and both of them had the hair on the back of their necks standing up. They crested a butte and looked down into a grassy plain, and there was Wolverine, as bold as you please. He had a young lady staked out and naked on the ground, and he was just in the act of raising his breechcloth. Cash and Finn were about 200 yards from him, and he hadn't seen them yet. He walked over to his horse and pulled a large knife from a scabbard attached to his Indian saddle, and then he turned with a purpose and headed back toward the girl. Finn dismounted, grabbed his rifle, and took a snap shot at the homicidal maniac. He hit him and knocked him off his feet, but he bounced back up, mounted his horse, and sped off. By that time, Cash had managed to dismount and had aimed his rifle and took a hurried shot at Wolverine too. But he missed. Wolverine raced off on a beautiful Appaloosa stallion, but he was bent over his horse. It looked like he was hard hit. Cash and Finn put their horses to a canter and rushed down to rescue the Indian girl. Finn admired the young woman. She wasn't crying or wiggling around trying to escape her bonds. Rather, she just lay there with an angry, venomous cast in her eyes. Finn had never seen a naked woman before, so he stared at her voluptuous figure longer than was polite.
Finn, do you think you can put your eyes back in your head long enough to cut her loose?
Cash asked.
I imagine she is chilly.
Oh, yeah, of course, Finn said, and he cut her loose. Cash threw her buckskin dress, and he and Finn turned their backs while she got dressed. After she was dressed, she trained her eyes on Finn. The way you were looking at me, I thought you wanted to take a turn with me like Wolverine did, she said. Now, ma'am, that isn't fair. I had no such thoughts, Finn said, and he turned red. Then he looked over to Cash for support, but Cash just rolled his eyes.
Are you all right?
Cash asked the young lady. What do you think? The young lady asked.
I meant, are you hurt?
No. Aside from being raped 3 times, I'm all right. But now I must worry that I might end up carrying that devil's baby.
How is it you speak near perfect English?
Cash asked. 2 white trappers spent a winter at our village, and they taught me.
What tribe do you belong to?
Cash asked. The Mountain Utes.
What's your name?
They call me Little Dove, she said.
That's a good name,
Cash said.
I'm Cash, and this young fella is Finn.
Thank you for rescuing me, Little Dove said. He had that long knife in his hand. He was going to kill me.
Yes, we saw. Where's your horse?
Cash asked. He wandered back up the trail. I'm worried he's gone back to our village. Cash looked over at Finn.
Finn, will you ride up the trail and see if you can fetch your horse?
Will do. Finn disappeared, but he was back in about 5 minutes, leading a handsome little paint pony.
Who were the 2 men that Wolverine killed?
Cash asked. One was my father, Black Hawk, and the other was the man I was going to marry, Grey Wolf. He was a great warrior, and a good man. We are so sorry this happened to you. You want us to take you back to your village? Yes. I'm not sure they will take me back. The chief was angry that I ran off with Grey Wolf. It is customary to have a marriage ceremony in the village, but we ran off and neglected to do it.
Well, let's head back to your village and see what's going on,
Cash said. They all mounted up and brought their pack horse with them, along with the 2 extra horses that had once belonged to the dead Indians. They headed north and rode for the rest of the day, keeping a lookout for Wolverine. They figured he was still dangerous, even if he was wounded. They came to a place in the trail where Wolverine went off to the west. Shouldn't we trail him and finish him off? Finn asked.
No, I think we should change our plans and deliver Little Dove back to her village,
Cash said. Yes, I suppose you are right. Maybe he's already dead, Finn said.
We can only hope,
Cash answered. Chapter 8 Rogue Mountain Men. Little Dove proved to be a useful trail companion as they rode north. That first evening, when they stopped to set up camp, she pitched in and helped them unload the horses and take them to water. Then she built a fire and insisted on doing the cooking. Finn took Cash off to the side and whispered in his ear. I feel guilty having this tiny little girl do so much work.
Listen, Finn, don't give it a second thought. Indian squaws are taught to work from the first time they learn to walk. Besides, she owes us her life, and she's showing her appreciation. Indians have this notion that if someone saves their life, they must serve that person for the rest of their lives. Hell, she probably is going to insist that you marry her.
What? That'd be ridiculous. I'm only 16 years old. And she's, 14? Cash laughed.
In these here mountains, you are both at the right marrying age. Don't be surprised if she tries to slip into your bedroll this evening.
He laughed uproariously. She better not, 'cause I'll kick her ass out, Finn said. What are you men talking about? Little Dove asked. You don't want to know, Finn said. Are you ready for supper? Little Dove asked.
We're starved,
Cash said. Six-Toed Baker had given them a buffalo haunch, so Little Dove had cooked up large slabs of that delicious meat, along with prairie turnips she had picked, and Indian potatoes. Then, of course, she boiled strong, hot coffee. Cash and Finn ate better than they had eaten in a long time. When the meal was over, she took all the pans, dishes, and utensils down to the creek to wash them. Cash leaned back on his bedroll and smoked his pipe, and Finn stretched out to read The Legend of Sleepy Hollow by Washington Irving. They had bought several books from Juan Hernandez at the San Vicente Rancho. Before long, Little Dove came wandering back into the camp, carrying all of the cookware and her buckskin dress. She was naked. In general, Indians don't have the same sense of modesty as the white man. Oh my God, Finn said, and he turned his head.
Little Dove, slip your dress back on. You're making Finn uncomfortable.
Little Dove laughed. What's the matter with you? She asked Finn. Little Dove slipped her dress back on before Finn developed heart failure, and then she went over and lay down on her bedroll. They were camped at a spot near where the silver mining town of Wallace, Idaho would be settled in the 1890s. They were camped at a spot where 4 streams and 5 canyons converged together. Cash decided to change the subject from Little Dove's brazen nudity to talk about the scenery.
Finn, how do you like the scenery here in northern Idaho? Do you like it better than looking across the unending expanse of ocean?
I love it. I'm a landlubber, Cash. If I never see another ocean again, it will be all right with me.
Finn, we're getting close to our destination and dropping Little Dove off at our village. Then we'll have to swing back east to reach our cave in Montana.
I've never seen the ocean, Little Dove said. I've heard it is big. It is, Finn said. Were you on a boat? She asked. Yes, we were on a sailing ship for 2 years. We were both shanghaied. What is this word, shanghaied? Cash explained what happened to them, and she sympathized.
Little Dove, where is your village?
They are camped at a beautiful waterfall just a ways northeast of here. Some call them the Spokane Falls.
That's out of our way, but we'll take you there. Then we'll have to swing back to the southwest to find our cave in Montana,
Cash said. Cash, why don't you just take me with you? I can do lots of work around a camp. I can build fires, cook, make clothing out of buckskin, chew leather until it is soft, butcher and skin animals, wash dishes, and...
All right, we get the idea,
Cash said.
It's up to Finn. What do you say? Can she join up with us?
I suppose, Finn said. If she'll just keep her dang clothes on.
All right,
Cash said.
We're already too far west, so we have got to beat her back to the east. Let's ride.
2 days later, they rode into Montana. They rode for an hour up a gradual incline covered with sagebrush. They were able to negotiate a vast upsweep of sage by riding into little barren corridors that were sort of like trails. They were thankful the expanse of sage had the little trails, because wading through unending sagebrush blanketing the entire mountainside would have been difficult. Finally, they topped out and looked down into a valley of dazzling beauty. The short decline in front of them was a forest of quaking aspen, with dazzling white trunks and limbs. The sun was hitting the forest just right to accentuate the tree's beauty, and the leaves were shimmering in a gentle breeze. At the bottom of the quaking aspen forest was a meadow with green grass that would come up to a man's waist. Just past the meadow, a pine forest climbed upward to the top of the distant ridge, and it had wide strips of sparkling green grass fanning out at different angles. At the top of one of the grassy strips, a herd of 100 buffalo were about to crest the hill. Then, suddenly, 3 mule deer broke cover in the quaking aspen forest and burst out into the meadow below. One was a 4-point buck, accompanied by 2 does.
"Shoot one! We need camp meat!"
Cash shouted. Finn dismounted, pulled his rifle from the scabbard, took aim, and dropped one of the does. Finn was so excited after making the shot that he was huffing and puffing.
"Good shot,"
Cash said.
"But I'm curious, why did you take the doe rather than that nice buck?"
"Because I remembered that you told me a doe is better eating."
"Yes, I did. I'm impressed that you remembered."
Before they rode down to dress out the doe, they sat and looked at the vista stretched before them. Off to the right and way above was a huge outcropping of rocks jutting high into the crisp morning air. It sort of looked like a medieval castle perched on top of the pine ridge. Several columns of solid rock flowed from top to bottom, looking like it had been sculpted by a giant hand. "I don't even know how to explain how beautiful this landscape is. I know I'm going to love Montana," Finn said.
"You haven't seen anything yet,"
Cash said. "Let's go get that deer," Little Dove said. "Tonight we eat fresh meat." They found the doe in the meadow below. Finn had hit her in the front shoulder, and it looked like the ball probably plowed through her heart. She had dropped immediately, and she never moved. Sometimes an animal, if not hit in a critical spot, will run for several hundred yards. Little Dove went to work on the doe and had it gutted, skinned, and quartered in record time. It was already starting to look like allowing her to run with them was a good decision.
"Good job, Little Dove. The next animal we bag, I want you to show Finn how to dress it. Or I will show him. That's something he needs to learn."
They decided to camp right there in the meadow. It was a good spot because there was graze for the horses, fuel for the fire, and a nearby stream for water. "If you brave warriors will unpack and take care of the horses, I'll cook dinner," Little Dove said. "I'll roast slabs of deer meat and heat a can of beans. You two like your beans, and I'm starting to like them myself." Their dinner was a wild success. Little Dove was a fine cook. The excellent grub even loosened Finn up, and he actually said a couple things to her in the form of compliments. But he was still wary of her. To him, she seemed promiscuous, and that made him uneasy. He wasn't used to such things.
"I hope all of this meat and guts doesn't bring old Ephraim down on us."
"Who's old Ephraim?" Finn asked. Cash smiled and lit his pipe. He wanted to enjoy an after-dinner smoke.
"Old Ephraim is the grizzly bear. There are a lot of them in Montana. We better hope we don't run into one. They are bad news. Sometimes a man can shoot 1.5 dozen times, and he'll still keep coming and claw, man, something terrible."
Little Dove went to the creek and washed the dishes. A wolf howled from up to the right near the huge outcropping of rocks, and another answered from off to the west. A chill ran up and down Finn's spine. "Will those wolves come down here and attack us while we are sleeping?" he asked.
"That's unlikely,"
Cash said.
"It's a rare thing when a wolf attacks a man. They would have to be mighty hungry. But old Ephraim, that's another matter. They'll often attack for no reason. Just 'cause they're ornery, I suppose. Let me warn you, Finn. If a grizzly sow has cubs, you get as far away from her as you can. They are mighty protective of their cubs."
"Are you going to teach me something new that I'll need to know to live in these here mountains?"
"Finn, you're a quick study. I feel confident you can shoot with accuracy, fist fight, wield a hawk, catch a fish, set a beaver trap. Tonight I'm going to show you how to mold balls for your rifle and horse pistol. And if there's time left over before we snore, I'll tell you what I know about knife fighting. I will say this, I'm not an expert with a knife. Just the thought of fighting a man with a knife gives me the heebie-jeebies. But I know a little about fighting with them."
Little Dove sat and watched while they molded bullets, enough to last them for a couple months. When they were finished, Cash admitted he was sleepy and he would give the knife lesson at a later date.
I'll give you a little help tonight, though.
He cleared his throat.
When you get in a knife fight, and that's inevitable in these here mountains, keep one thing in mind. Defense. The object is to not get stabbed or sliced, and to slab and slice your enemy. Watch his every move and avoid being cut. Then when you see an opening, that's when you lash out with speed. Even if all you can do is cut his arm, several small cuts on your opponent will eventually weaken him from blood loss. Alright, this old man's going to sleep. See you tomorrow.
Cash, before you go to sleep, I got one question, Finn said.
Yeah, what?
You think Wolverine is on our back trail?
Sorry to admit it, but yes, I do. I think you wounded him good, but it's hard killing a devil like him.
The wolves were still howling from off in the distance, and the meadow and forest creatures were doing their thing. When the forest goes quiet, that's when a man has to be worried he is about to be ambushed. Field mice were scurrying about, but staying close to their holes in case a predator took a notion to devour them. Squirrels scratched at nearby tree bark. Songbirds chirped with diminishing frequency because they were preparing to nap. An owl occasionally hooted, and the wolves continued howling. I suppose one could regard it as nature's symphony, lovely to listen to in its own right. Around midnight, when most of the campers were asleep and the forest creatures had quieted down, Little Dove crept over and crawled into Finn's bedroll with him. And she was naked.
What in hell do you think you're doing?
He whispered so as not to wake Cash.
Go back to your own dank bedroll,
he said. Don't you understand? She said. You saved my life. So I'm supposed to be your wife forever and ever.
Like hell. It ain't right sleeping together when we're not married. Now go back to your own bedroll.
Don't you like me? She whispered.
Yes, I like you, but that doesn't mean I have to sleep with you.
She snuggled up to him, and he almost lost his resolve. But he stayed strong, and he shoved her from his bedroll. Don't you find me attractive? She whispered.
Yes, but...
He didn't finish the statement, because she scurried back to her own bedroll. Wolverine was badly wounded. Finn's .50 caliber ball had passed through the back of his right thigh, narrowly missing the bone. He rode his horse a little ways off the trail and waited for Finn, Cash, and the squaw to pass. He wasn't in any shape to fight them. He watched them go by, so he figured it was safe to move his camp a little closer to the trail. He went to work immediately to treat his wounds. He never uttered a sound during all of this. He cleansed the entry and exit wounds with hot water. Next, he heated his knife blade until it was glowing red, and he cauterized the wounds. He fashioned a stick he used to limp along with, and he located penstemon, an astringent wild herb with lovely lavender flowers. He limped back to his camp, sutured the wounds with sinew, placed a poultice consisting of the penstemon front and rear, and he made bandages from bark that he wrapped with strips of deer hide. After he finished doctoring himself, he was surprised to see 3 white trappers riding along the trail. He was hidden back off the trail a ways, so they didn't see him. He decided he could use another horse and extra supplies. So when they rode alongside him, he shot the man bringing up the rear with an arrow. The man tumbled from his horse with an arrow in his neck. The remaining 2 trappers were cowards, and they scurried off, not even bothering to see if their companion was dead. Wolverine let them go. He had what he needed. The man was trailing a pack horse loaded with supplies. He inherited 2 horses, a bedroll, food supplies, a Hawken rifle, a horse pistol, traps, a bullet mold, lead shot, a Green River knife, a pipe, tobacco, and a bottle of old Overholt rye whiskey. He spent that evening getting drunk and lay back on his new bedroll and repeated strange incantations over and over. He was very angry, and he intended on trailing Finn, Cash, and Little Dove, and killing them. Then he resolved to cut them into little pieces. Firelight played off of his tattooed face in a strange, squiggly display of shadows, and that, coupled with his chants, made him appear demonic. One would suppose, in reality, he was demonic. Just before he settled down to sleep, he resolved to trail Finn, Cash, and Little Dove to the end of the earth if necessary, and to kill them. They were trailing along with 6 horses, and the sign they left on the trail would last quite a long time, provided it didn't rain. They rode for a couple more days, veering west into Montana. The scenery seemed to get progressively more beautiful as they traveled. The landscape had been scoured by ancient ice sheets during the last ice age that ended 25,000 years ago. The land had been rudely formed during that 75,000 years of ice. Huge boulders were strewn helter-skelter, and the mountains and valleys were twisted and broken by the unfathomable weight and movement of ice. It stirred a man deep into his soul to see such natural wonders. One early morning, the 2 trappers that had escaped Wolverine's murderous assault rode into their camp. They were so dirty and slovenly looking that Finn and Cash knew they were going to be trouble. If flies had the choice of landing on a pile of horse apples or these trappers, they would have chosen the trappers.
"Well, will you look at this?"
a little fat one said.
"We have an old man, a yonker, and a juicy-looking squaw. I do believe this is our lucky day." "Do you understand what old Samuel is trying to tell you?"
a huge, nasty-looking trapper with bulging muscles said.
"I'm Fred, and this little round fellow is Samuel. And we are here to kill you and take all your horses and supplies."
The little man laughed.
"You don't mind, do you?"
"Yes, we very much mind," Finn said.
"Now that disappoints me,"
the fat man said.
"It seems like you should understand that we have more of a need for your worldly goods than you do. Oh, and if you're worried about dying, you don't need to worry. I've heard passing to the other side is rather pleasant. Besides, we're giving you the opportunity to visit your friends and relatives that have gone before."
Cash had his horse pistol tucked into his buckskin trousers, and he pulled it and shot the little fat man named Samuel in the forehead. It created a little round red dot amid the grime on his face, and the .50 caliber ball exited the back of his skull, taking along with it blood, brains, and bone. It was untidy. The huge trapper named Fred didn't have a gun with him, so he pulled a knife from a scabbard and headed toward Cash. Finn intervened. "If you kill Cash, that will give me time to fetch my horse pistol off my horse and shoot you dead. So if you are hankering for a knife fight, turn around and let's get with it," Finn said. Fred turned toward Finn and rushed at him with murderous intent. Little Dove threw Finn his Green River knife, and the battle was on. Surprisingly, Finn wasn't all that scared. There was no time for it. He was occupied with avoiding being sliced and diced by Fred. Fred went at him like a whirlwind, and he attempted stabbing Finn up under his ribs and into his heart, and he swiped at Finn's throat a number of times. Finn's defensive moves just came as second nature, and he avoided being cut. Fred was coming at him like a madman, but after a while Finn saw an opening, and he sliced Fred's right bicep to the bone. Fred screamed in pain and rage and redoubled his effort to kill Finn. Both men were fighting with the blades up on their knives, and it was a desperate, deadly struggle. Both men were breathing heavily and sweating profusely. It was inevitable. Finn got cut on his left shoulder. It was a shallow cut, but it hurt like the devil. That little bit of success urged Fred to rush at Finn to finish him off. But Finn anticipated it, and he stepped aside and let Fred rush on by. At that juncture, Finn saw a way to end the struggle. He dashed up behind Fred, and when Fred turned to continue the struggle, Finn plunged his knife into Fred's belly and up into his heart. Fred collapsed to the ground in a heap.
"Damn you all to hell, you killed me,"
Fred said. "Seems like it," Finn said as he felt the wound in his left shoulder. Before Fred took his last gasps, Little Dove raced up and sank a tomahawk into his face, all the way to the hilt.
"I'll be damned,"
Cash said as he chuckled.
"Remind me to never make that squaw mad."
Chapter 9. Catfight. The two deceased trappers had 10 beaver traps that Cash and Finn inherited, along with 2 fairly nice horses, saddles, bridles, foodstuffs, a 54 caliber Harper's Ferry rifle, a 71 caliber McCormick horse pistol, 2 Green River knives, bullet molds, lead shot, powder, a new buckskin shirt, and 10 continental dollars. Cash handed Little Dove a horse pistol and a Green River knife.
Here, girl. Take good care of these. They might save your life someday. Do you know how to load and fire a pistol?
No, I've never owned a pistol. Cash smiled.
Well, come over here then. I'll give you a quick lesson.
Finn sat and watched while Cash showed her the intricacies of the pistol. After she successfully loaded it a couple times, Cash had her fire it 3 times.
Take good hold of it with both hands, because you are a little girl, and this pistol kicks like a mule. It spits out a ball nearly 3/4 of an inch in diameter. Really works well for up close.
I sat and watched just to make sure I've got it down, Finn said. I want to be able to successfully load and fire a horse pistol.
It never hurts to be absolutely sure of something,
Cash said. Yep, Finn replied. Cash tapped the dottle out of his pipe and stowed it away in a pocket.
By the way, I want to thank you for saving my life again. I'm beholden to you. Oh, and I should mention, you did a good job during that knife fight. It looked like you might have been fighting with knives for years. I'm really proud to have you as my partner.
Dang, Cash. Thanks. I just did what had to be done. I'm proud of you too, Little Dove said. I think you're going to make a really good husband. What? Dang, Little Dove, don't talk such nonsense. Cash laughed. He figured Finn wouldn't be able to hold on much longer before he succumbed to her considerable charms. After several more long days in the saddle, they rode into a location that would eventually be incorporated as Kalispell in 1891. It was an uncommonly beautiful location that was located between 2 mountains and what would later be named Flathead Lake that spread across the landscape, and is known by some as the portal leading to what would later be known as Glacier National Park. The lake was fed with crystal clear glacier water, which stretched for 27 miles. The cave they were heading to was located in Glacier National Park, a landscape of incomparable beauty, a landscape replete with rugged granite mountains, rushing rivers, waterfalls, pine forests, and of course, glaciers. Oh, and it should also be mentioned, there were uncommon numbers of grizzly bears, a beast that can tear a man to shreds with astonishing ease. Cash caught a huge lake trout in the lake, and it proved to be more than all 3 of them could eat. While they were eating, a stray dog wandered into their camp and plopped down by the fire, just as if he owned the place. He was a fairly large dog, and he looked like a mutt of indeterminate breeding.
Well, I'll be damned, Cash said. I think he just adopted us.
I'm going to feed him with what is left of this fish, Little Dove said.
If you do, you'll never get rid of him,
Cash said. I know, I'm good with that. I think he is so ugly that he is pretty.
Huh?
Cash responded. He can be my friend until Finn decides to take me as his wife. Oh, for God's sake, Finn growled. Cash laughed until he snorted.
Don't worry, I think Finn is weakening,
Cash told Little Dove between snorts. Don't you two just think you're funny? In the wee hours of the morning, Little Dove made another foray into Finn's bedroll, and of course, she neglected wearing clothes. Not again, get the hell out, Finn whispered so as to not wake Cash. This called for drastic measures. The situation called for something new. Up until that point, Finn's resolve hadn't cracked, but right then his resolve cracked open like an incubated egg. They got to know each other. You should know this, Finn. I love you, and I adore that red hair of yours. If I get pregnant, I'm hoping to see a baby with red hair, not one that looks like a demon. Even if it's Wolverine's, it won't look like a demon. It will be an innocent, beautiful baby. We will love it. I love hearing that. I was afraid if it's Wolverine's that you would hate it. No way. Little Dove, I love you too. She went back to her bedroll, floating on cloud 9 with joy. Her man loved her. The next morning, Finn went about his chores, whistling a gay Irish tune, and Little Dove's skin seemed to have taken on a glow. Cash got out of his bedroll, scratched, then looked at Finn, and then over to Little Dove.
"Uh-huh. How did you two sleep?"
he asked, suppressing a chuckle.
"Just fine,"
Finn said.
"It was a good night,"
Little Dove said.
"All right. If you're sure you don't need a little more sleep, let's eat our breakfast and ride."
He shook his head and smiled. "You really think you're clever, don't you?" Finn said.
"Yep."
Around noon, they found a squaw lying beside the trail, and it looked like she was injured. Finn dismounted and walked over to her, and was happy to discover she was still alive. He gently hoisted her to her feet, and then she spoke in a language that Finn didn't understand.
"Do you understand what she is saying?"
Finn asked Little Dove.
"Yes. She said that her horse nearly stepped on a rattlesnake, and it shied and it bucked her off. Then it took off back toward her village. She said her mother is a shaman, and she was out trying to find herbs and medicinal plants for her mother. Ask her if she is hurt,"
Finn said.
"She said she hurts all over, but the worst is her arm. She thinks it's broken."
She did have a broken arm, just above her elbow, so Cash went to work and used a couple tree branches to make a splint. He put one branch on the outer surface of her arm and another underneath, and then he bound the arms really tight with rawhide strips.
"Ask her what her name is,"
Cash told Little Dove.
"She said her name is Diane, and that means little deer in her language."
"Ask her what tribe she belongs to,"
Cash said.
"She said she is a member of the Kootenai from northern Montana and southern Canada."
"Little Dove, how are you able to understand her language when you belong to the Ute tribe?"
Little Dove smiled.
"I can't understand everything she is saying, but enough to catch the important things. Most Indian tribes have a lot of words in common."
"Ask her if she is hungry,"
Cash said.
"She said she is starved,"
Little Dove said. The mongrel dog seemed to like the injured squaw. It licked her face. Little Dove cooked their dinner.
"It is early for dinner, but I want to feed Diane. Don't expect another dinner late this afternoon," she said.
"Bossy little thing, isn't she?"
Cash asked, smiling.
"Maybe she needs a willow switch taken to her rear end,"
Finn said, laughing.
"Yeah, just try it,"
Little Dove said. While they ate buffalo hump, pulped acorns, and beans, Cash asked Diane where her village was located. Little Dove said that Diane said the village isn't far off. As it turned out, it was located on Big Mountain. That would one day be the location of Whitefish, Montana.
"As soon as we eat this grub, we'll take you there. Do you think we can make it there before it gets dark?"
Cash asked.
"She said it can be done easily,"
Little Dove said. They put Diane on one of their spare horses, and they rode toward her village.
"Tell her she can have the horse and saddle,"
Cash said. When Little Dove told her that, she squealed with delight. Cash got Little Dove's attention.
"Ask her if it hurts too bad to ride. Tell her if it does, we can wait until tomorrow."
Little Dove relayed the message to her.
"She says she hurts all over, but she's sure she can ride as far as her village."
"Good. Let's ride,"
Cash said. They hadn't been on the trail 10 minutes when they were met by 4 fierce-looking Kootenai warriors. They came charging down on the group, menacing them with spears and bows and arrows. Diane's horse had lopped back into the village, and they were out looking for her, and fearful some harm had befallen her. They thought Cash, Finn, and Little Dove had taken her captive. Diane shouted to them and explained that she wasn't a captive, but instead that she'd been rescued. The warriors changed their attitude, and they all rode toward her village. 20 minutes later, they arrived. Kootenai were attractive people. The men wore tunics and breechcloths, and the women wore leather dresses. Their clothing was fashioned from the skins of antelope, deer, and buffalo, and it was gaily covered. Even their conical-shaped teepees were brightly covered. As it happened, Diane was the chief's daughter, and he was happy to get her back. He had feared the worst. Communication was a little strained, but Little Dove did her best to interpret what was being said. Crowds of curious Kootenai gathered around to hear what was being said, and most were demonstratively beholden to the rescuers. But there were two young warriors that were openly hostile toward Finn's party. One of them was feeling his oats, and he gave Finn a shove, pushing him down. Finn bounded back onto his feet, and rained 6 lightning-fast blows on the Indian's face and ribs, and the warrior hit the ground and was unconscious. The chief noticed the entire encounter, and was embarrassed by the behavior of the two warriors. He ordered the one still standing up to wake up his companion and leave the village for 2 days, and then he turned and apologized to Little Dove concerning the behavior of the two warriors. Diani's mother, the shaman, came out and examined the splint Cash had made to align and immobilize Diani's arm, and she approved of the work. Next, the chief spoke to Little Dove. Chief Grey Fox insists that we stay for dinner, and then spend the night. He wants to show his appreciation.
Tell him we would be happy to have dinner and spend the night,
Cash said. The dinner wasn't bad. It consisted of whitefish, mollusk, camas bulbs, and water lily seeds. Cash brought out their coffee and everybody drank, and it seemed to please the Kootenai. The chief brought out a beautiful buckskin shirt and trousers and gave them to Cash, who then put them on and paraded around proudly. They tried to outfit Finn with buckskin clothes as well, but nothing fit. He was too big. So they gave him a beautifully decorated tomahawk.
Finn, I'll show you how to fight with one of those when we get back out on the trail, Cash said.
Later that evening, Finn got up in the middle of the night when nature called. He didn't know why, but Diani was wandering around the camp outside of her teepee. She lured Finn into her teepee. He thought she was going to give him a gift for saving her. She wanted to give him a gift, all right. Her body. She apparently adored him with all of his muscles and red hair. He politely declined her offer and went back to his teepee. Why were you gone so long? Little Dove asked.
Diani lured me into her teepee and tried to bed me, he told her,
deciding to be frank about the matter. Little Dove grabbed her Green River knife and rushed out of the teepee. As it happened, Diani was back outside. Bitch, you tried messing with my man, and now I'm going to cut your throat, Little Dove shouted.
Shit,
Cash said. Shit, Finn said. And he hurried to put his clothes back on and get outside to intervene. Diani didn't have a chance against Little Dove, because she had the broken arm, and she was still sore all over from getting dumped off of her horse. Little Dove went berserk. She bit, scratched, kicked, screamed, and pulled Diani's hair. Then she put the Green River knife to Diani's throat and was fixing to cut it when Finn came up behind her, wrapped his hand around her mouth and chin, and lifted her off of Diani. She kicked, gouged, bit, and pulled at Finn's hair. He tired of it and shook her so hard that her teeth nearly fell out. Settle down, damn it, he said. By that time, Cash had gotten dressed and stepped out of the teepee.
I'll be damned, he said. Remind me to never get on Little Dove's bad side. Finn, take Little Dove along with us and let's get our horses ready and pull out. I think we just overstayed our welcome.
Several of the Kootenai came out of their teepees, but they didn't seem to mind that Cash, Finn, and Little Dove were leaving. When they got out on the trail, Cash noticed that Little Dove had taken the horse and saddle along that he had given to Diani.
Finn, lead that horse back to the village and drop it off. We'll wait for you here. It's bad form to give a person a gift, then take it back.
He turned to Little Dove.
What the hell is wrong with you? If you had succeeded in killing the chief's daughter, the 3 of us would be upside down, tied to a tree. And they would be lighting a fire beneath our heads to burn our skulls so badly our brains would slide out.
I don't care. That bitch was messing with my man.
Damn,
is all Cash could manage to say. Chapter 10. Tragedy. As soon as it got light, Cash pulled the little caravan off to the side of the trail to have a powwow.
Little Dove, we need to talk,
Cash said. I know what this is about. You didn't like the treatment I gave Diani.
That's right. I like you, Little Dove. You are a valuable addition to our group, and I like seeing you as Finn's mate. but I'm ashamed of what you did, Dione. And you could have gotten us all killed.
I'm sorry, Cash. I got so jealous that I went a little crazy.
You went a lot crazy.
All right, a lot crazy.
Dione didn't do anything bad enough to get killed over. Did you really intend on killing her?
No, I just wanted to scare her bad enough to stay away from my man.
That's nice hearing that. Do you think you can behave yourself in the future? You're such a sweet little thing most of the time. Every now and then you go crazy.
Cash, I promise to do better. Cash smoothed the mane on his chestnut stallion and looked over to Finn.
Finn, do you have anything to add to this?
No, I think Little Dove's learned her lesson. Our group means to only do bodily harm to those who genuinely deserve it.
Will you pull your horse over next to mine?
He asked Little Dove. She did as she was told, and he reached over and gave her a little hug.
You are one of us, and we love you,
he said. Little Dove got tears in her eyes. I love you both too, she said. I'm sorry about what I did, but I was just so jealous. Late that afternoon, they reached the cave. Home sweet home.
I can't believe we are actually here. I dreamed of this place for 2 years while I was captive on the Tam O'Shanter,
Cash said. How long do you intend for us to live in this cave? Finn asked.
This is only a stopgap. Next spring I think we should build us a nice cabin.
Good idea, Finn said. Why don't we just build a teepee? Little Dove asked.
Sorry, Little Dove. I don't want to live in a teepee.
That's all right, she said, but I always liked them.
Let's build torches and go in and have a look around. I just hope a bear hasn't decided to make it his home.
Finn couldn't believe how beautiful it was in the cave. It opened up into a large chamber.
This is where we'll live,
Cash said.
But let's go back a way farther because I want to show you something.
They moved into another chamber full of stalactites and stalagmites.
Those are formed by dripping water full of lime and calcium carbonate,
Cash said. How do you know that? Finn asked.
I read it in a science journal. It also said stalactites hang from the ceiling and stalagmites grow up from the floor. Sometimes they connect to make one long column.
Did you also read that in that journal? Finn asked.
Yep.
The stalactites and stalagmites were beautiful. The light from the torches played off of them and sparkled with different colors. But less charming was a bunch of bats hanging upside down from the ceiling. Did they bite?
Nope. And don't worry, we won't be bothered by them. They have to go out every night to hunt for insects, but they don't fly out the front of the cave where we'll be. They go out the back. I've never been back there, but there must be another opening to the outside world.
They spent hours fixing up their cave to make it comfortable. They brought in all of their equipment and stored it against a back wall so that it wouldn't be underfoot. They fashioned a crude table and chairs from a downed pine tree that was nicely seasoned. They laid in pine for their bedrolls to rest upon. They set up a fireplace and a small alcove and a sidewall, and then there were several natural shelves in the cave wall above the fireplace that was perfect for storing pots, pans, and utensils. Finally, they brought in 2 buckets of water. The water came from a nearby artesian well, and it was crystal clear and really cold. And they brought in armloads of firewood. They could make refinements to their living quarters later on, but what they had done would work fine for the immediate future.
Little Dove, what's the chances you could whip us up some grub? I'm starved,
Cash asked. She cooked buffaloes and wild potatoes with hot coffee. Cash and Finn chipped in and helped her clean up the dishes, and they all climbed into their bedrolls.
I don't know about you young folks, but I'm tired,
Cash said. Since we did most of the work, we are tired too, Finn said.
Gosh, I did my share of the work.
Finn and Little Dove laughed. Calm down, I was just joshing you.
It's a good thing, 'cause I was considering getting up and whipping your young behind.
Is that right? Finn said.
Tomorrow I'm going to take you 2 out and show you how to trap beaver.
All right.
Little Dove, do you know how to skin a beaver without ruining the pelt?
Yes.
Good. Oh, and tomorrow we're going to have to figure out where to keep our horses. Oh, we'll need to start bringing in a lot of firewood because when it snows, it is difficult rustling up wood. It sounds like we have to do lots of work to get ready for winter. You got that right. What are we going to do for food? In a couple days, we'll go on a buffalo hunt.
The following day, they got up early, had a nice breakfast in their new home, then grabbed 10 beaver traps and went off to set them. They found a beaver dam that looked promising. There were several drag trails leading to the dam. "What do we do now?" Finn asked.
Be patient, I'll show you.
"I know that beaver fur is valuable and that they make gentlemen's hats with them, but what happens with the rest of the animal?"
When we catch a few, we'll have Little Dove cook up some beaver tail for us. It is delicious. And with a lot of the meat, we can feed our dog.
That reminds me, we need to give our old cur dog a name. Let's name him Kitchy. "What does that mean?" Finn asked. "It means brave. A warrior from the Algonquin tribe stayed in our village for a while, and he had a dog. His name was Kitchy."
Kitchy it is. Now let's set some traps.
They waded out into thigh-deep frigid water, and Cash showed them how to open the jaws on the trap, how to anchor it in the bottom of the stream, and how to bait the trap with castor taken from the castoreum sacs near the anus in both male and female beavers. Beavers use the castoreum along with urine to mark their territory. Next, Cash told them how to set a float stick so they could find the trap when they returned the following day.
If we catch a beaver, will he be alive when we come back tomorrow? Nope. I've got it set up so they drown.
Late that afternoon, Little Dove cooked a fine meal at their new fireplace. It worked very nicely, and they anticipated they would enjoy many meals cooked in that recess against a side wall. That evening, Little Dove made several romantic overtures, and Finn was only too happy to join in. Their love was complete at that time. Cash got a kick out of watching them during the day. They stayed close together as much as possible, and it was obvious they were deeply in love. Cash had to chuckle when he remembered how Finn had resisted Little Dove's advances in the beginning. They returned the next morning to check the beaver traps they had set. They caught 2 beavers, and when they were looking over their catch, a trapper rode up and greeted them.
"I mean you no harm," he said. "I just want to chew the fat for a few minutes. You can get mighty lonely at times here in the Rockies." "Never met. Who are you?" "The name's Robert Carpentino. I'm Italian." "I'm Cash Jackson. This young fella is Finn Sullivan, and the young lady is Little Dove. Glad to meet y'all."
Robert had 2 pack horses loaded with beaver furs.
"Where are you headed with all these beaver furs?" "I'm headed to the rendezvous that is being held down on the Sweetwater this year," Robert said.
Cash and Robert passed about a half an hour exchanging stories about trapping. It tickled Finn, because he figured about half the tales they exchanged were exaggerations.
"Robert, could you do me a small favor?"
Finn asked.
"Maybe. What do you need?"
"Take this letter to the rendezvous, give it to William Ashley. Ask him to take it to St. Louis and mail it off to Ireland. I'm sending for money."
"Sure, I can handle that. Well, I've got a long ride ahead of me, so I'll get back on the trail. Nice meeting you folks."
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
"Goodbye. Let's get back to our cave and eat beaver tail,"
Cash said. "Yep," Finn said.
"How much money did you ask for?"
10,000 pounds. If the money actually shows up, I'll have to take it to a bank to get it converted to dollars.
"Damn, son, that's a lot of money."
If I actually get the money, I will pick out a nice spot here in the West and build us a house. A real house. Part of the house will be set aside for you, Cash. And Little Dove and I will take another part."
"Sounds nice. But where will you go here in the West to exchange the pounds for dollars? So far, there are no banks out here. None at all."
"I figure I'll have to go to Taos, New Mexico, or St. Louis to make the exchange."
"Finn, I hate telling you this, but there aren't any building contractors here in the West, and there isn't any place to buy lumber for this house you hope to build for us."
"I suppose I'll have to lower my sights to just building a large log cabin then."
"Finn, I can't think of anything I would like more than having a nice log cabin to rest these old bones in. It would be a godsend."
"We could hire some people to help build it, along with some nice furniture."
"Now you are talking,"
Cash said.
"But for now, let's make our cave as comfortable as possible."
The next morning, when they all woke up, Cash didn't get out of his bedroll. "What's wrong, Cash? Are you sick?" Little Dove asked.
Yes, I'm sick to my stomach, so I want you and Finn to go and check our beaver traps. I'm going to stay here in my bedroll, and hopefully I'll get feeling better.
So you don't want breakfast?
Good Lord, no. Just the thought of food makes me want to upchuck.
They caught 3 more beaver, so Finn and Little Dove rushed back to the cave to tell Cash about their good fortune. When they entered the cave, 3 Indians were standing over Cash, and Cash was dead. 2 of the Indians dashed by Finn and Little Dove before rushing outside. That left Wolverine standing there with his bloody knife, because he had just begun the grisly task of dismembering Cash's lifeless body, and he had already cut off 1 of Cash's feet. Cash was bathed in blood. He had been stabbed innumerable times. Little Dove started crying, and Finn was grief-stricken. But then that turned to an uncontrollable rage. Nobody had any guns, so Finn and Wolverine would have to go hand to hand. Finn was carrying the beautifully hand-tooled tomahawk the Kootenai had given him as a gift for rescuing Diane, the daughter of the chief. It looked like Finn's hawk would be going up against Wolverine's knife. The 2 men circled each other, looking for some way to quickly end the forthcoming struggle. Suddenly, Wolverine lunged and tried to plunge his knife into Finn's belly and up into his heart. Finn sucked in his belly and backpedaled, narrowly missing being gutted. The battle raged on for another 10 minutes, with a lot of thrusting, slashing, and parrying. Finn had one advantage over Wolverine, though. Wolverine was highly skilled with the knife, but his thigh that Finn had put a bullet in was slowing him down. Both men were getting tired, and they were both shaking from the tension. Finally, one time, when Wolverine reacted too slowly to one of Finn's hawk swings, Finn took advantage of it and cut a slice in Wolverine's left bicep. While Wolverine was looking down at his wound, Finn buried his hawk in Wolverine's head. The spawn of the devil was on his way to hell. There would be no more deaths and dismemberments there in the West. Little Dove rushed in and plunged her knife into Wolverine's throat, but Finn pulled her back. He's dead. Immediately after Finn killed Wolverine, they heard the 2 Indians that had been with Wolverine coming back into the cave. They are probably armed with bow and arrow or guns. We don't stand a chance against them with our knife and hawk. Grab that torch. Let's retreat back into the cave. They won't have a torch, so they'll get lost in total darkness. Who knows, maybe they'll fall down a shaft or something. Chapter 11. Unbelievable Discovery. They fled deeper into the cave, and there was enough ambient light at first so they didn't need the torch. The walls of the cave were coated with creamy-looking slime and mold, and it stunk of something that smelled like rotting vegetation. They walked around enough bends in the cave that they figured they could light the torch, and the Indians wouldn't be able to see it. The torch was welcome because they had gotten far enough back in the cave to experience the complete absence of light. When there is a complete absence of light, a person can hold a finger up to within an inch of an eye and not be able to see it. They crept back through the cave for at least another half a mile. They were cautious to make sure they didn't fall into a hole. Finally, they felt a little breeze that was blowing on their faces. Thank the Lord, there must be another opening to the outside world. Remember Cash said the bats flew out of the back every night to look for insects? The mention of Cash got Little Dove crying again, and Finn's mood went downhill. Let's see if we can find the opening and get out of this cave. They searched for 10 minutes before they found the opening. It was hidden behind a column of rocks stacked up in front of the opening. The wall was built by humans. I wonder why. Finn wondered out loud. They stepped around the wall and out into the sunshine. They couldn't see anything at first until their eyes adjusted to the light. Finally, when they were able to see, they couldn't believe their eyes. They were in a narrow valley that looked like it was about a mile long. It appeared there was no way out of the valley except back through the cave, because the valley was surrounded with near vertical cliffs. A large herd of cattle, horses, and goats were eating the lush grass that came up to a man's hips, and it was being gently rippled by a slight breeze. There was a pine forest along the fringes of the canyon, and several stands of quaking aspen. Multicolored wildflowers were sprinkled in amid the lush grass meadow, adding to the alluring sight before them. Have we stumbled into paradise? What's paradise? Finn gave Little Dove a pat on the shoulder and a hug. Paradise is a beautiful, peaceful, and pleasant spot on earth. And this simply has to be paradise. They could see 5 cabins along the canyon wall to the right. Here comes a man and a woman, Little Dove said. My name's Connor Murphy, and this is my wife, Sophia. Who are you, and how did you find your way in here? My name is Finn Sullivan, and this is my woman, Little Dove. We came through the cave. The only way in, isn't it? Yes? Does anyone else know about our little canyon? We like our life in this canyon to stay just the way it is. For that reason, I am afraid you're going to have to leave. Connor, 2 Indians chase us in here. They want to kill us. That's what I was afraid of. You are bringing trouble to our canyon. Connor, we have no intention of doing that. If we go back out and kill those 2 Indians, will you then let us come back here to live? We would just like to winter here, and then we'll leave. Connor shook his head. Are there others out there that might find this place? No. There are only those 2 Indians. While they were talking, Connor's wife had been listening. Connor, don't be unreasonable. She fixed both Finn and Little Dove with her eyes, and she liked what she saw. Of course you can spend the winter here. If you get rid of those 2 Indians, that is. Now come to our house and we'll have dinner and put you up for the night. Then in the morning, you can go settle your account with those 2 Indians. Little woman, I hope you aren't making a mistake. We've been living here without any problems for 5 years, Connor said. How many people are living in this canyon? Finn asked. There are 4 other married couples and a total of 4 children. Sophia and I haven't been blessed with any children. If we stay in this beautiful canyon for the winter, I suppose we'll have to build a cabin, Finn said. Nope. Fred and Lucinda Jackson just left their little valley 2 weeks ago, headed off to California. You could move in their cabin, Sophia said. Dinner was an American tradition. They feasted on beefsteaks, potatoes and gravy, and peas. Here's the deal, Connor said. Each family is entitled to 2 beef cows a year. Milk cows supply milk, and we have a communal garden that provides everybody with vegetables. You will be expected to work in the garden, milk cows, butcher beef animals, gather eggs from our chickens, and work on other people's cabins if the need arises. You will also be expected to help take care of our horses. If you shirk your duties, you will be thrown out. Sometimes we leave the cave and go out on hunts. If you kill elk, deer, or buffalo, you will be expected to share the meat. What you have proposed doesn't sound unreasonable, Finn said. Sophia walked over and gave Little Dove a hug. You are such a beautiful little thing. Welcome. I'm sure that you and I will become good friends. Connor scratched his head. Where's your equipment? How do you expect to kill a couple Indians without weapons? We had to leave everything and flee, Finn said. We will supply you with 2 horse pistols and knives. Now I'm going to give you a solemn warning. If you don't find those Indians and dispose of them, you can't come back here. All right, Finn said. By the way, that red hair of yours and your name points out to me you must be Irish. I am. I was born and raised in Dublin, Finn said. Well, that makes me feel friendlier toward you. I was born and raised in Ireland myself. Listen, Connor, do you have a shovel we could borrow? Finn asked. Of course. What do you need a shovel for? A murderous Indian named Wolverine killed our friend, an old fella named Cash. He's lying back at the mouth of the cave. We want to bury him. That's terrible. Is he one of the Indians you were going after? Connor asked. No, I already killed Wolverine this morning in a knife fight. He was a demon. He killed people and cut them up. And nobody knows exactly why. Good luck, Connor said. As soon as Finn and Little Dove entered the cave, Finn stopped Little Dove so they could light their torch. You know that if we can't find those 2 Indians and kill them, we'll survive even if Connor won't let us back into the canyon. What do you mean? Little Dove asked. We can live in the cave. Finn, I didn't want to tell Cash, but I never did want to live in the cave. Me either, Finn said. But I didn't want to upset Cash. If those Indians stole our supplies, our food, and our weapons,
Living in the cave isn't going to be easy.
Finn nodded his head in agreement.
I know. But we'll survive somehow. We've gone too far to fail.
They found the grand old man, Cash, right where they had left him. They carried him outside the cave and found a nice spot to bury him. Once they gently laid him in his grave, they backfilled it with dirt, fashioned a cross, and put it in the ground at the head of the grave. Then Finn recited a little prayer over his grave, and they both cried.
Little Dove, if we can find those Indians, I don't want you to get involved in the fight. I want you to hang back. And if they kill me, go back into the cave, go into that canyon, and beg them to let you stay.
No way. I love that old man, and I want to get revenge because they probably helped Wolverine kill him.
You might get yourself killed.
I don't care. I want to be in the fight.
All right. I can shoot and I can reload the pistol.
Their crying was interrupted when the two Indians materialized above the crest of the hill that swept up to the cave. Instead of rushing forward to fight, the Indians turned tail and ran back down the hill. Finn rushed to the crest of the hill and looked down. The Indians hadn't yet reached cover at the edge of the trees. It wasn't fair, but Finn took aim with the horse pistol and shot one in the back. It was a fairly long shot for a horse pistol. The Indian collapsed, and Finn only had one more Indian to deal with, and he and Little Dove could then live in the canyon. The second Indian had Cash's horse pistol, and he took a shot at Finn and missed. The shot wasn't even close. Apparently, he had never fired a pistol before. The Indian dropped the pistol and then took hold of his bow and arrow. He fired a couple of arrows at Finn that came so close Finn felt their wind when they sailed by. Apparently, the Indian was very good with his bow and arrow. In fact, he was so good, one of the arrows glided along Finn's shoulder and cut a groove. It hurt like the dickens. The battle raged on in the forest below the cave. Finn fired the horse pistol 3 times but missed. The forest was too thick to get a good shot. The Indian fired a half-dozen arrows at Finn, but all of them missed too, though not by far. The battle went on and on for another half of an hour, as Finn and the Indian dashed from tree to tree to get cover and fire their weapons. Suddenly, Finn heard a shot. He wondered if the Indian had another pistol and had fired it at him.
"Come on down, it's over with,"
Little Dove shouted. Little Dove had circled around and came in behind the Indian.
"Shot him right in the head,"
Finn said.
"Yes, I got within 10 feet of him. He was too involved fighting with you and didn't even hear me sneak up."
"Well, bless your little heart,"
Finn said, and he kissed her on the lips. They found all of their horses, their beaver traps, their supplies, and their weapons. The Indians had hidden everything down the hill a ways, and in a copse of mountain mahogany. They took all of their horses and equipment back through the cave, and stepped into the sunshine that was bathing the magical canyon. It took a while for their eyes to adjust to the sunshine, and finally, as expected, it was a magnificent sight to behold.
"Welcome to your new home,"
Finn said. Author's note. I want to thank Paul Stevens of Northern Florida for handing me the plot to this Mountain Man novel. He is a fine old gentleman and a friend of mine. Paul spends his every waking moment selling goobers at his peanut stand and reading westerns and Mountain Man books. Hundreds of them. Scotty V. Casper. Finn Sullivan, Mountain Man, by Scotty V. Casper. Published by Dusty Saddle Publishing. Read by Jerry Underhill.
This concludes our story of Finn Sullivan, Mountain Man, by Scotty V. Casper. Thank you for listening, and we hope you have enjoyed this story. You can find more books by Scotty Casper on Amazon Kindle and in paperback. Please join us next week for another Western adventure. And please hit the subscribe button so you'll never miss an episode of the Stagecoach.